I ended yesterday or whenever you're watching this, the last installment with the Hebrews 12, verse 29. It says, "For our God is a consuming fire." And that almost sounds like, what a mean God we have. Well, I mean, unquestionably, there is an aspect of this that's pretty aggressive. Our God is a consuming fire. This is from the book of Deuteronomy. And in the context in Deuteronomy, Moses is speaking to Israel. And he's in his last days. He knows that he cannot cross the Jordan River and come into the promised land. God has made that clear to him. And it's almost as if Moses says it and then reiterates and then reiterates. He gives some history and some blessings and some curses. Pretty strong blessings and equally strong curses. Blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience. And one of the points that he makes is you're not dealing with some idol. You're dealing with the God of the universe. And our God is a consuming fire. This seems to stand in contrast with what the Apostle John wrote. Our God is love. Let's see if we can somehow, I don't know, what's the word I want to use? Connect them, at least. I don't know that I can make everything wonderful, but I do think there's an aspect of God as a consuming fire that I think a lot of people don't too much consider. For most people, the thought of God as a consuming fire is God as a punisher. And he is the judge, the final and ultimate judge. But he is also a God of love and mercy and grace. How do those things fit? Let's think about a consuming fire. What would be the purpose of the consuming fire that Moses was talking about and the Hebrew writer now references? In Old Testament history, the time period that Moses is talking about in the book of Deuteronomy, things that were unclean, things that, and by unclean, there are some things that are ceremonially unclean, and there are other things that are more, I mean, we're talking medically unclean. I mean, biologically, unclean. I don't know I don't have the right words for it because I'm not a healthcare guy. But I do know that, for instance, if a garment that had been exposed to a disease like leprosy was to be burned. Why? To eliminate the possibility of it infecting someone else. The things that were to be burned and consumed were, in one sense of the word, God commanded because he loved Israel and he wanted what is best for them medically and physically. Other things were pass through the fire, but that's not the same thing as a consuming fire, except that when you pass a metal through a fire, you are, in a sense, you're consuming anything that is not the metal. You're consuming the impurities. That aspect of God as a consuming fire is not just punishing. It is him making a loving provision for health and well-being. I wonder, have you ever experienced in your life a time when God burned away something that you really wanted? I'm pretty sure you have. I have. And at the time, I felt disappointed, and I couldn't understand why. I mean, it didn't make sense to me. But it wasn't very long after that I was able to look back on it. I'd been given an invitation to serve on staff at a mega church in a city across the continent from where we were living at the time in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we had come to the point that I was putting our house on the market so that we could sell it and then move. And then I got this fairly clinical email that said, we have had to enter a hiring freeze, and so this position is no longer available. I was kind of devastated because I thought what I could bring to their table and what they had talked about when we'd met was going to be a pretty neat deal. And I really never lived, aside from 4 years when I was in grade school, I'd never lived outside of Oklahoma. So, a pretty extreme change of cultures and geography. And I was looking forward to that. But so it was discouraging. But I'm very grateful to God that he did what he did and closed that door. I think he burned something away that would not have been good for me. A couple of things. One, not long after this event, that church began to have some very, very difficult times and what looked to me like some pretty bad leadership decisions. And that would not have been a good thing to be caught in that as a new hire. But a second thing is, it was in Washington State, where cloudy is normal and sunshine is like, wow, we get 3 days of sunshine. It's not that bad, but I self-diagnosed here, but I think I know enough about it to make a reasonable diagnosis that I have seasonal affective disorder, meaning when it gets cloudy outside, I get gloomy inside. And I half jokingly tell people I'm solar powered, but the truth is, I think I would have struggled environmentally in Washington State. So God protected me. It didn't seem like it at the beginning. Most of the times when God is burning away something that needs to be burned away, when he's burning it away, it doesn't seem, it rarely seems happy and good and it is most often, in my life anyway, it's most often been confusing and frustrating and disappointing. But that's just this one little perspective. When I get outside and I get a broader perspective, the burning away seems kind, in fact, certainly for my best interest. And that's not the only time in my life that's happened. It's happened on a number of occasions, and I'm guessing for you, you've experienced this as well. Our God is a consuming fire, and don't kid yourself. And you don't want to provoke the God who is a consuming fire. I mean, the verse 28 is part of this whole thought, so let's take a look at it. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. Don't forget, our God is a consuming fire. Second, don't forget this. This was a Hebrew writing to Hebrews. And when he quotes Deuteronomy chapter 4, they got it. They knew. They were familiar. It wasn't like that cherry picking some obscure idea. No. This is a very Jewish idea that was carried for centuries. And now, as Gentiles, I think many things within this book, as Gentiles, you and I read it and may not be able to connect the dots. And this is probably one of those where I might miss it. I do not think that totally explains our God is a consuming fire. The big point I wanted to make is there are two sides to that. You don't mess with the God who is a consuming fire. You approach him with reverence and awe. And the other side is what God consumes is for our benefit and our good. If you're going through a season where God seems to be burning things away, don't snap out of it. That's not what I'm saying. It'd be unfair for me to minimize the difficulty you might be going through. I don't like it when people do that to me, and I don't want to do that to you. But I will say, endure and fix your thoughts, guide yourself to think about God and to come to him, worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, because our God is a consuming fire. Well, going to shut her down a minute early today. And I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie.